Ahoy, America! 'Tis Captain Sebastian the Black here, with my guidelines, my 6 rules for social distancing. Now listen up, you scurvy dogs. Rule number 1. Rule number 1 is wash your hands. You lather them up with soap. You scrub them and scrub them and scrub them some more. That way you won't be a dope. Rule number 2, you scallywags, is don't ever touch your face. Don't pick your nose or finger your mouth. You'll infect the whole human race. Now greetings have changed. No more shaking your hand. Just give 'em an elbow instead. A salute or a wave are best for now, 'cause you don't want Grandma dead. Now, when you cough and sneeze, use your sleeves. Don't spray it all about. Mask your face and glove your hands before you leave the hangout. Now if you go outside, stay 6 feet away. Give me some social distance, 'cause if you get real close, that's a problem for me, 'cause you threaten my existence. Now there's one last thing you need to know to avoid getting the bug. Now listen real close, you scurvy dogs. Just stay home and grab your mug. That's the captain's orders. Don't give me any resistance. I need my social distance. Lads, America, be strong. Our voyages begin again soon. Arr.
It's September of 2020, and the hits just keep coming. For those of you keeping score, we've added in September more hurricanes, more wildfires, and the passing of Chief Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. It can be completely overwhelming at times. I remember when we started in January, New Year's, for some reason I thought 2020 should be this great year. It sounded like this legacy milestone of a year, and it's turned into a shit show. I do try and remain grateful for certain things. I think about the people that are going through this in isolation and have really no physical human contact. And I am very thankful that I have my family around me. I'm grateful that we've had actually some terrific conversations about everything that's been going on, and we've had a lot of laughs and joy despite everything that's going on. Very thankful for my friends and being able to be outdoors in nature near the water, and very grateful for Charlie, who we got adopted just before we went into lockdown, and it was honestly the best thing that could have happened. He completely galvanized our family during this time and gave us something to think about besides focusing on ourselves. And it is indeed very difficult to go down into a dark hole with somebody licking your face, isn't it? 2020, the year we all adopted pets, that would be a legacy.
Hi, everybody. My name is David Jacobson. Saying hello to you from the beautiful city of Newark, New Jersey. Thank you to David Wally for putting together this beautiful project. I am very honored to be a part of it and to join the many voices on 20 on 20. The first thing that I found very difficult about this project was saying something thoughtful about it, about the situation of 2020, the global pandemic, the horrible and toxic political and social environment that we're in. But the more and more that I thought about it, thoughtfulness is exactly what we need. To quote the amazing scholar Judith Butler, we are in a position where we've taken anti-intellectualism as our primary intellectual position. And the only way to get rid of it is to think, practice mindfulness, and think thoughtfully about the future of our country and the future of this global pandemic. One particular thing that's hit home for me during this pandemic has been the thought of family. A lot of us are very upset that we haven't seen our friends and family, and the more that I thought about it, I thought that we were all, including myself, not talking about the huge privilege in seeing family. For many immigrant families that come to this country, not seeing their family for years while they're looking for better opportunities is kind of an everyday thing. And we need to exercise more patience and know that ultimately not seeing our loved ones is part of caring for our community and caring for them. Um, all in all, as a executive producer in the events industry, we are certainly hurting. But at the same time, there have been great acts of resilience and community building between all of us. And just want to say to stay safe, vote, and wishing you all the best in this year to come.
So when COVID was unfolding, I lived in Benin, where I served as a Peace Corps volunteer. Benin is a small country in West Africa, and much like everybody else, I had no idea what to expect. So I continued on, with normal work days and plans, which included applying for a third-year extension. And I mentioned that one specifically because I remember applying on Friday, and that following Monday, I got a phone call from my boss saying, "Hey, I know you probably worked really hard on that application. Pretty much meaningless now because Peace Corps is suspending all global activities and evacuating over 7,000 volunteers." So that was one plan off my list. And from that phone call to my flight leaving Benin, it was 48 hours. And in those 48 hours, I had to, pack up my house, and get down to the main office to finish paperwork, and that was a very stressful time. But I think the next 49 hours were even more stressful because that was the international travel, where flights were canceled, airlines were grounding their planes, airports were closing, and you would go look, and we did multiple times, had to go look at those flight departure boards, and it would just say canceled, 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 canceled. So always hoped that none of our flights were delayed and didn't get stuck anywhere. And I didn't get stuck anywhere, got home on time, and with family right there waiting for me as soon as I got out of the airport.
So when this pandemic began, both of my parents happened to be in two different places in the world. My dad was ended up in Poland, where we're from, in Europe, and then my mom was in Thailand, where they both retired. And then the whole world went into lockdown mode. And the crazy thing is, so Thailand did an amazing thing where Thailand not only locked down the country, but they went one step further and they locked down every neighborhood in every city. Meaning you could not leave your neighborhood other than for a medical emergency. And the amazing result of that action has been that the island of Phuket went over 100 days without a single case of COVID-19, which is amazing. But the byproduct of that is that I've not been able to see my parents, my mom, my dad, in all this time. If something were to happen, I can't just hop on a plane and fly to Thailand. They're not going to let me in the country. And if I were to leave the U.S., well, the U.S. wouldn't let me back in because I'm not a U.S. citizen. So you're kind of stuck. God forbid something worse were to happen, I couldn't even go say goodbye, So on a continuous kind of loop, you've got this question in your head going like, well, what's going to happen today? I hope everything's fine, You don't hear from your parents for a few hours, you start to freak out, And so I urge you, if you can see your parents and see your family, go do it. Do it safely, with a mask, and at a distance. But go see them, because not all of us can.
One of the most frustrating things to me when I was protesting downtown Cleveland with the Cleveland Black Lives Matter movement for Jacob Blake, the police for some reason didn't think we had a right to be angry. We came peaceful. Yeah, we were mad and frustrated and deeply horrified with this oppressive system in our country, but we were articulate of our demands. And And we were peaceful with our frustrations, but the police didn't think that in this city where Tamir Rice had been murdered, where a child's blood was on the hands of the police, they didn't think we had a right to be angry. They didn't think we had a right to be protesting like every good American citizen should when there is an oppressive system murdering its citizens. So all of a sudden there was tear gas. And I think there's this notion that a lot of people stick to that has never made sense to me and has become especially apparent during this time, that if a system has been in place for a while and is established, that therefore it is inherently good. And I think we have to let go of that notion, and we have to ask ourselves, who created that system, and who is it inherently good for? And I think if we can't do that, we can't make real change.
Hello, I'm Chris from Berlin, and 2020 for myself really slowed me down. I could reconnect to myself. Coming from a life which was so hectic, I was driven by deadlines, schedules, traveling a lot. I could, having that extra time was scary for me in the beginning because I had to see and find out what I want to do with that extra time. But also there were no excuses anymore to do things which you always wanted to do. For example, I started roller skating again, which is quite silly, but I love it to be outdoors. I love it to be doing the exercise. And then I could also, see my family a lot, seeing my mom, my pa, and my grandma, spending time with them, which really, brought me joy. Reconnecting with friends and, checking in with them if they're okay. That really is something I want to do more. And I hope, I hope we all get through this. Please wear your mask and keep your distance. And
I think that during quarantine, I actually changed in a really positive way. Before COVID hit, I was in my senior year of high school, and constant, fast-paced, go, 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 trying to figure out where I was going to college, trying to get good grades. And when everything stopped, I had so much time on my hands that I was almost forced to look within inside myself and grow as a person, which ended up being really, really beneficial for me. I've really kind of found myself and found what I like to do. And at the same time, I've also had the opportunity, even though we're apart, to really grow my relationships with my friends and see the value in taking time out of my day to care about them and show that they're valued. Because I really had to look inside myself and tell myself that I was valued, and take a step back and realize that, taking care of me is just as important as getting good grades and figuring out what I want to do with my life. And if I'm not doing that in a healthy way, then it's not worth it.
I find myself being more of what I knew I wanted to be before the pandemic started. I don't know if that makes sense. There's like a considerable gap between like knowing a thing and then being a thing. And I feel like before the pandemic, I was always telling myself like, I need to be more patient. More patience will serve me in my process. I need to slow down. I need to take on less work. I need to focus on my foundations. And even though I had known that for X number of months and years, it wasn't until I had the opportunity of time and the restriction of space to really become that. And while I'm certainly not perfect and I'm still processing a lot of the gap between those two things, I found a lot of peace during this time. And I suppose that the most valuable thing I've learned is that I'm capable of that peace. I'm a pretty high energy, keep moving sort of creature, and it's really nice to meet this side of myself in a new way that I might have known I would have gotten along with in February, but it wasn't until we were forced to spend time together in March and April and May and June and July that I really realized what I was missing.
So when all the quarantine stuff started, I thought, okay, no big deal. I can handle this. It'll be fine. I have all these projects to do around the house. I wanted to paint and do remodeling and stuff. So I just figured that'd be fine. Give me a lot of chance to do that and try to stay positive. And then we find out that people were not telling the truth. And this is way bigger than anybody thought. And here we are 7, 8 months later. And it's not getting better. It's getting worse. It really is getting worse. During this pandemic, I've had 2 family members pass away, 2 of my aunts that I love dearly. And they didn't die from the virus. They were older, but one died in Puerto Rico, one died in Havana. And I think what was really hurtful for me is that I couldn't go to see either one of them before they passed away. Travel restrictions and all that didn't let me do that. And it was really sad to me that I couldn't say goodbye. It was really hard. And now I have an uncle who's just turned 95 yesterday. He lives here. And he hasn't left his house, not once, since all this started. And I'm thinking, he doesn't have that much longer to be here. So it's just not right for him to live like his last couple years on this earth in fear of getting sick. It's not right. It's just not right.
In February of this year, when COVID started hitting, my daughter broke her hand. We had to take her to the emergency room. Spent about 12 hours there. During that time, she came in contact with some very ill kids, and unfortunately, a couple days later, she wound up getting sick. In turn, that caused my whole family to get sick. At the time, they had no idea what was wrong with us. They said it was the flu, it was an upper respiratory infection. Come months later, we found out it was COVID. My oldest daughter had very light symptoms, more like flu-like. We all, as myself, as the rest of us, she got tested negative for the flu. She had mild symptoms. My oldest son, had like her mild symptoms, but developed bloodshot red eyes, which they thought was an allergy. Persisted for over a month. And it was found out later, again, connected. My son underneath him, my middle son, he had flu-like symptoms, persisted for about 2 to 3 weeks, fever, cold, then finally went away. My youngest son, he had a fever on and off for about a month, cold-like symptoms, very lethargic. And then my youngest daughter, the same way, very cold-like symptoms. She had a fever for over a month. My youngest son and my youngest daughter had the worst. They both had trouble breathing at night. They had upper respiratory, like a really bad chest cold, but it was probably the worst one you could possibly get. By the end of it, she was running fevers all the way to 104. He was running high fevers. And then the very last day he had a fever, he actually lost all control to all his bodily fluids. In other words, he was throwing up, had diarrhea, couldn't control it for about a 3 to 4 hour period. Turned white, pale, could not control anything that was coming out of him. Then me and my wife, we also had some symptoms, and then we had a little bit different, where we had very achy feeling to the point where our whole body was hurting for about 3 to 4 days. My wife was stuck in bed. Unfortunately, I had to go to work. Like I said, we did not know what it was at the time. My job forced me to go to work. They said, "Oh, you just have a cold." It wasn't a cold. I could barely stand. I was falling asleep standing up. I was in the back, went back for lunch. I fell asleep several different times. It was probably the worst flu I've ever had. Honestly, I felt like dying. Me and my wife both said the same thing. It felt like we wanted to die. And then after everything's said and done, there's complications later. Like for myself and my wife, we have what they call fog. Sometimes things we would know like the back of our hand, do not remember to the day. Just today, instance today, we were forgetting things that we've done a million times, forgot. And they said that's COVID fog. Feeling in in your palms of your hands, the bottom of your feet feels like they're not real. And the way our doctors explained it, we've come to find out it's a vascular problem. That means the blood in your veins, that connects to oxygen, deoxygized. So you have no oxygen going to different parts of your body. You're just basically suffocating yourself. And further out that, my uncle got COVID at the same time, and several months ago, and wound up passing away from it. My aunt, cousin, and a bunch of his family also got it because they all live together. And being as long far as it's been, seeing how people want to go to school. My kids have been back to school since March, and as of right now, they are not going back to school. Seeing how our current president and the landscape, how everybody wants to go back to work, go back to school, but they don't want to be responsible and wear a mask. I wear a mask everywhere I go because I'm trying to protect myself, trying to protect my family, and to protect other people, doing the responsible thing. And I take it as a slap in the face. That's how sick I got. How some coworkers of mine who got really sick, and then my family, my daughter. To me, to them, people that don't want to, they want to send their kids back to school. They want to do this and that, and they don't want to wear a mask. To them, just imagine holding your baby daughter, your baby son, 2-3 weeks, holding them in bed while they gasp for air, checking them every 5 minutes, making sure they're breathing. It's horrible. And until the day, we don't know the after effects. And to see our president takes this as a big hoax, using it for a political stunt, it's horrible. It just shows that he really doesn't care, to be frank. So I take it as a very slap in the face to the people who've gotten sick and the people who have passed and people who've lost loved ones to this. We need to do something. We need to be better than what we're doing. Too many people are dying. This illness is not no joke. It's not just a flu. If it was a flu, you get a cold, you take some medicine, it's over in a week. Not a month, not 6 months, not a year. And for sure, people are not dying by the thousands.
It turns out that I wish I had the faith and magical thinking of my family. That's something that has been excruciatingly difficult to me, is the thing I am most jealous of in these times. I come from a family of medical caregivers all over the spectrum, whether that's in-home health care or elder care or grief work, physicians, surgeons, EMTs, paramedics, office workers in healthcare. It's a thing we're all drawn to. And yet, right now, we can't gather to mourn the loss of another family member not related to COVID, because the large group that all still remain in the same area residentially to each other firmly believe that COVID is a hoax that will all go away on election day. That treatment is just being withheld to create a press sensation, and that a vaccine will suddenly show up. These are loved ones who are trained to know different. And yet, I look at those of us who are either primarily or secondarily trained to help with response and who are working on creating protocols and finding ways to do this. And to be bluntly us versus them, they're the hopeful ones. So I've been trying to steal some of that, what psychologists call positive delusion, lately. I've been trying to look at, what if I firmly believe that while I know there will be no silver bullet, because that's not how healthcare works, that many, many, many of us will use all of our brass bullets together, that we will all put on our masks and wash our hands and conscientiously discuss what are safe levels of risk and create groups that we can be around without masks and find ways to do that. It's a little harder here in Florida, but I find that the strongest of all things is hope. And while I've had to sit a lot of virtual Shiva in the last 6 months and create several more end of life plans for friends, loved ones, or even people who just asked so they didn't have to be alone via remote, that our community endures. And that's just the community of humans willing to reach out and say, I care.
When the pandemic arrived to Europe through Italy, and then very quickly it looked like it was spreading all over the world, I was kind of upset with what I thought at the time was an overreaction of the media about the real consequences of what could have been just another of those pandemics that we've gone through. And it was frustrating to me to see the huge influence it had on the perception of fear of the world. And then just a few days later, I had to admit that I was completely wrong, and I could see very quickly that it was not something manufactured by the media, but that there was something really bad with us. And the realization of that was mainly being able to see it closely, luckily not with direct impact on my family or friends, but people working on the front line on healthcare, making us aware that there was a lot of people getting sick and that many of those people were getting very sick and that some of the people were dying. That was a reality check for many of us, I guess. And suddenly we find ourselves confined in our houses and our homes, which at the beginning was kind of a semi-social experiment that I was, aside from the terrible situation that many people had to go through, we were having a lot of philosophical conversations with friends and family members, of course over Skype and over the phone, about how that was kind of a good way to slow all of us down and give us time to think about the priorities in life and how crazy we are not living our lives.
One of the things I find that I miss the most during this time of COVID is just being able to be out and be with people and not be on guard. as someone who has anxiety, it feels very reminiscent of, this constant needing to be alert and aware of my surroundings. And that is something that I feel like COVID-19 has stolen from all of us, is the ability to feel safe outside and around others, around strangers. We watch movies now of pre-COVID era, and it feels like that all the people in the movies aren't taking our situation now seriously. It's kind of silly to think that they should even be concerned with that, because it didn't exist then. But you watch it and you're like, oh my gosh, why aren't they wearing masks? Why are they so close to each other? Why are there so many people around? And it's interesting to me because I feel like that's one of the things that that I miss. I miss it the absolute most, is just being able to be around humans that don't live in my house.
Well, 2020 sure has been a bitch. I was thinking about things to say, a reflection of what this last, 8 months has been for me. And I think most people, we think, well, okay, we have to go towards positivity, right? We can't just wallow in everything that's happening to us and, sit there in your self pity. You can't do that. You're going to eventually kill yourself, essentially, right? So we have to look on the bright side of things. And thinking about something to say for this, I have nothing profound or, let's look on the bright side of things statement. I don't have that. And right now, how I'm feeling today, mid-October of 2020, I'm tired. I'm tired. A little bit angry. You know, we all had to make sacrifices, and I'm, going through that right now. It's just tough. But we have to keep thinking positive and focusing on what's important in life.
I think that this moment, in all the ugliness it's brought up, in all the joy, in all the very visible need we are seeing to commune, to be together. I think this moment, and I believe it is going to change for us as a culture, it is reminding us that we are all human. We are all bodies that breathe and smell and touch and taste. We are all hearts. We are all souls. We are all of these things. And that the way we come together as human beings is not to be taken lightly. The way we celebrate our grief, the way we celebrate our joy, the way we celebrate our neighbor, the way we come together is how we know we are human. It's how we know how to be alone. And I believe as an experiential maker, this moment that has forced us in a very, very painful way to slow down is going to make us better at the thoughtfulness and care and step by step journey that we will create in bringing people together. I hope that for us. I believe that for us. And I would love to believe that part of what this means is we will never really have to convince anyone again that people want experiences. They want to be together. It will be the most important thing, and it is the thing in a variety of ways I miss the most.
For me, one of the most important issues that we need to address right now as a society would be how to inform and educate ourselves better for the future. We live in the age of information and we have access to all this content online, and yet we can see some of the most uninformed communities standing and racing for the wrong reason, and this is happening again and again and again. And we're living in a world where it's easier than ever. I don't think there's been an easier moment in history to actually take care and protect your loved ones and yourself than right now wearing a mask. So I find it really hard to believe when I read and I see online all these conspiracy theories from people about the virus. Because to me it's either you're so alone, you feel so lonely that you don't have anybody to care about, that you don't care about what happens to the rest of the world, which is sad, or you do have somebody to care about but you don't, and that's terrible actually.
When I first got the message that my spring show of my senior year of high school got canceled, I honestly didn't know what to think. I thought, this will blow over soon. I'm sure that I'll go to college in the fall and act on stage with aspiring actresses like myself. And here I am 6 months later, studying acting over Zoom, and I've lost that feeling of hope. It is really hard because I crave that feeling of stress before an audition. I crave the feeling of being with a huge group in rehearsals and going on stage and seeing the audience in front of me. Not knowing when that will happen terrifies me because it is what I love the most, but we have to get used to it, right? This is our new normal.
So I am a horror filmmaker, and that's how I make my living, is making macabre and scary scenarios in which I put people in. And I feel like 2020, I am the person in that scenario. And worse, I feel like I'm the villain in that scenario. I'm a father of two children, a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. We all suffer from asthma in my family. Both of my kids do, my wife does. And not only do I suffer from asthma, I suffer from chronic bronchitis. And so I think these last 5 or 6 months have been so difficult because of the restrictions that I've had to put on my family and my children. We live in this very, family-friendly neighborhood where every day the kids go outside and they play and they ride their bikes, and the families are outside and they've social distanced, but they're still very close to each other. And it's so hard for me as a father, watching my kids look out the window and continually asking me, why can't we go outside? And I'm very harsh. And I'm just like, that's not our plan. We're not going outside. I just don't want to risk it. I can't risk it. And the longer that time passes, the more I think I feel like a villain, because these kids don't understand. They're so young. They don't get the idea of what COVID-19 is, or why we're not allowed to go outside. So that's been very hard on me. And the kind of relationship that I have with those closest to me. In some respects, I'm a villain to our neighbors. Why won't Darren let his kids come outside and play with our kids? Why won't Darren come over and have beers? Because I look at what I have to lose. And knowing that I was in the hospital last year for pneumonia, it scares me. This whole thing has been such a strange, surreal experience as a father. Thinking, am I doing the right things for my children? Or am I doing more damage by not letting them have those social interactions that kids need? They absolutely need them. So 2020 is the worst Saw film that's ever been made, and the most torturous, horrific trap that has ever been part of it. And I feel like I'm directly in the middle of it.
Something happened to me a couple weeks ago. I go hiking every day with my mom, and my mom is white. And we went hiking, and we always meet in the middle. So we hike separately, and then we hike together, and then we walk home our separate ways. So we are separate again. And on that day, in the height of all this conflict, we both found out the next day that we were fearful to be walking by ourselves for the same and completely different reasons. My mom feeling like she might be lumped into some crazy, white racist and be attacked, and me feeling like I might be persecuted for the color of my skin and being attacked. And that's when it really started to sink in that we are being divided, and everyone is feeling fear. And there's got to be another way. I what's interesting about that is that fear came to reality for us, unfortunately. About 6 weeks later, my mom and I were hiking, and we started being followed by someone who was screaming racial slurs at the top of his lungs. And, you know, he was chasing us, and we were in fear for our lives and our safety. And I couldn't help thinking at that moment that I can't believe my mom is going to die because she had a Black child. And we were praying together and looking all over the place, all over the ground, just seeing if there was something that we could find to fend off this man, whether it be rocks or sticks or stones or whatever. And then something miraculous happened. All of the people in the houses around us came running out of their homes to our aid. And they came together in all races, genders, creeds, colors, nationalities, and we fended off this monster, and they saved us. And in one of my darkest moments of my idea of humanity came my brightest light, and it gave me hope for our future, because together we can defeat all of this hate. And I never even considered for one moment that my neighbors would come out of their houses, out of their safety net, to come and save a stranger. And they all did without hesitation. Every single house on that block, the people were outside in the streets with us. And I just think, what if that was all of us in this whole nation coming out to chase away those few, those people that hate. They are not the many. They are not the many. They are the few. And it gave me hope instead of fear and anger. I went through that too. But then it gave me hope.
I was a history student in college, and I noticed that many historians look for patterns. And that kind of hardwired my brain to look for repetition of ideas, movements, or behaviors. For the 19 years I've been a professional artist, I've worked at a ton of different companies, and in every single one, invariably, one or many people will say that it's a transition time. Have patience, the industry or company, you know, they're going through a transition. I hear this every single place I've ever worked, which tells me that change is not inevitable, it's constant. My industry and my company have been going through a devastating upheaval. Thousands laid off with no end in sight. But despair devours creativity. And I think it's critical that we remember that our industry is going through this tumult. That doesn't mean we still can't be artists. The companies, the multi-billion-dollar projects that we create for them, they are going to pause. But me, my colleagues, my friends, we're all still artists. We can still create art. We have to, because honestly, in the face of such times, I don't know what else to do. So we should just create.
Growing up into adulthood, one of my favorite quotes, and one of the quotes I most related to as a human being, was always an excerpt from the English translation of the Diary of Anne Frank. And I still remember reading it for the first time in 7th grade. And the quote was translated to, "But in spite of everything, I still believe that people are really good at heart." And that was 100% of the way that I had lived my life. Always, you know, even watching the things that my brother went through, and just adversity he faced, and anything I was exposed to, I always just really thought in the back of my mind, you know, that person doesn't understand what they're doing. And it really broke my heart the way that people treated other human beings this year, whether it was simply not caring enough to inconvenience themselves in order to save the lives of other human beings, or the criminal and monstrous racial injustices that have just been blown sky high, 1,000 feet tall, for all of us to watch this year. And it really just still blows my mind and leaves me at a loss for words. A week ago, we just listened to the President of the United States refuse to denounce white supremacy. And if that doesn't answer every question that you have when it comes to voting in November, I really don't know what to tell you. I really don't know what to tell you, because I can't even find words for that. Your people are suffering, and they're dying, and they're being murdered and targeted. And I just can't imagine another human being seeing that happen and saying that's okay. It's not okay. It's beyond not okay. And I really, really hope that that you don't let it happen anymore.
Well, we're just about at the end of 20 on 20. It's late October, and this is the 15th episode. We've been doing these since early May. I want to express my gratitude to the 300 plus people who have chosen to be part of this project, this time capsule of this most difficult year any of us have probably lived through, or probably ever will live through. I've sought to include the widest diversity of people, different experiences, different demographics, different viewpoints. Many have chosen to participate. Some have been a little bit too shy or haven't quite known what to say, but I've tried to include as many thoughts as I possibly could. And I'm so grateful to everybody who's done so in such an articulate fashion. And I'm so grateful to the audience of people who watch these patiently, listening to what other people have to say. It's given me a great feeling to know that some of you have expressed to me that you found a sense of community in these videos, and that they've served to lessen some of the anxiety of isolation. Mission accomplished if that's been the case. And I hope that we all continue to have these conversations with each other in groups and individually as we do our best to move productively into the future. We're never all going to agree about anything. How could we? There's too many of us. There's too many opinions. There's too many experiences that inform our opinions. But in our personal lives and in our professional lives, we usually endeavor to understand what our friends, family, colleagues are thinking, what they're saying, identify where there's areas of disagreement, and do our best to solve those disagreements, come up with solutions, come up with answers, come up with compromises. We can do this. We can speak straightforwardly. We can be articulate in our beliefs. We can listen to others and hear where they have different opinions. And we can do our best to respect each other and make small compromises, and to hold firm when we can't make compromises at all. It's been a tough year, and for a lot of us, it's been a tough 4 years. I hope everybody will vote in the coming days, and I hope that our country will get back on track. Thank you again, and enjoy these last few minutes at 20 on 20. Thank you.
This is definitely a time period where there's lots of thinking going on, lots of talking going on, many, many voices. And I hear them on the news, and I hear them in the streets, and I hear them in the grocery stores. But what I'm not as aware of is listening. The listening is not happening so much. And what it sounds like we're all looking for is some peace of mind, some way to live our lives pain-free, conflict-free, ways to live a life that gives us some joy, some happiness, some sense of really being alive. And the hindrance to that is being able to see that there are other people on this planet who actually think differently from the way that we think, want things to feel good to them as we want things to feel good to us, but they go about it in a different way. And in listening, we can come to the answers. There isn't one answer. We shouldn't expect that there would be one answer. There's so many people, how could there be one answer? But listening is gonna make all the difference. Listening doesn't hurt. It's not painful to hear what someone else says. You don't have to judge it. You don't have to take it on as your own. But if you just hear it, it's healing for you, and it's healing for the other person as well. And if I could do one thing for the planet, is to gift people with the desire, the ability, the willingness to listen. Simple, but not necessarily easy. But I have faith. I see this as a healing time. I think it's possible, more now than ever.
Pack up your troubles in your old kit bag and smile, smile, smile. Pack up your troubles in your old kit bag and smile, boy, that's the style. What's the use of worrying? It never was worthwhile. So pack up your troubles in your old kit bag and smile, smile, smile.
You know, when all this happened and I was sitting in my room in a fetal position, crying profusely, I didn't know who to turn to. And then I just, WWDWD. What would David Wally do? I'll tell you what he would do. I'll tell you what he would do. He would manage the shit out of this quarantine. He would have his entire team on boots on the ground in 5 minutes. And this whole shit would have been fixed 1 fucking week in. Because if anybody can fix this fucked up government, it's David fucking Wally and MIKHAEL too. Because those motherfuckers know how to put on a goddamn party. And they can fix this shit. They will get into the government. I think we should fuck Trump. Trump, Pence, all those motherfuckers, get them out of the office, and you put David Wally in there and you get this shit fixed. Because I swear to God, nothing runs smoother than a production that David Wally has his hands in. So this is what I have to say. Government, step the fuck out of the way and you let David fucking Wally do this right.
I'm David Wally and I approve this message.